Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome you to Savant Events Embracing Agile webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lukas Schleritzko. I'm the resident producer here at Savant. And to give you a quick update to what's going to happen today, we're going to be focusing on adapting your business to scale your fulfillment efforts and to drive revenue fast with the aid of the two people who will do the presentation today, for which I welcome Rob Shaw, the MD EMEA of Fluent Commerce, and Paul Lynch, the Area VP and MD EMEA of LiveArea, to deliver their presentation. Just so you know, in case you don't know what they look like, Rob will be on top of the screen and Paul at the bottom. Just a quick reminder, you can always post questions on the tab on the right. And otherwise, just enjoy. And thank these two men for their expertise. We're now going to start.
I guess we'll start off by just maybe giving a summary of how things have been over the last few weeks and what some of the observations that we've seen in the market of retail and direct-to-consumer brands. And I think as we've emerged from lockdown because of the COVID-19 virus, I guess the common theme that I'm seeing from a lot of clients that we're engaging to and the consumers that we speak to on a daily basis, the common theme is that they want to know whether items are available and when can they have them. There's obviously been some real pressures on supply chains as stores have shut, and a lot of pressures around product availability as people panic buy. And really, I think a lot of businesses have adapted to those changes really well and have continued to thrive. I think the supermarkets in particular have done a fantastic job. And there are others that have unfortunately been significantly impacted by store closures. When you consider people like Primark, for example, that went from a £650 million a month business to zero when their store shut and they didn't have an online facility to fall back on. And a recent survey by the CBI cited that 69% of businesses have said that there has been a significant negative impact to their business because of the global pandemic. As consumers, though, I think the interesting point I would raise is that 50% of us are now buying things that we haven't bought before. Whether that's because we're in or have been in lockdown, we're looking at things like decorating the household goods, for example, or we're buying things to entertain children or buying things for homeschooling, etc. There's a growing trend of buying new items, and 70% of us are buying more than we would do normally online, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we're seeing, isn't it, that people have now got to think about business continuity and the ability to flex. And I think what I'm seeing from our customers is those customers that have the ability to be really quick to change their business model are succeeding, and those that have found it very difficult are finding it increasingly difficult in these market conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So one of the things that LiveArea have done is some research over the last 4 or 5 weeks and asking companies about where their investments are going to be coming in the latter half of 2020 and into 2021. And over 50% of the companies are looking to invest in digital commerce and IT infrastructure projects as a key priority. And I think that just goes to show that this market has really taught us all that we need to have a lot more scalability, adaptability into our solution stack. And, we need the ability to change quickly. Nobody now knows where the journey for COVID-19 is going, and therefore it is difficult to plan.
Yeah, and I think that's the need for change and adaptability has been called out by this survey that actually came out at the end of May, Paul, from Shop Talk and their virtual conference. And the question that they asked their viewers were, what is the most significant long-term change we'll see in the retail and business models because of the global pandemic? And there are already a trend for things like click and collect or buy online, pick up in store, and curbside pickups. But what we've seen is that the trends of how retailers have adapted have actually meant that these trends have accelerated, and I think they're probably here to stay, because consumers now are getting used to a certain way of fulfilling their goods and returning their goods. And I think as well, we have to recognize that there are multiple different personalities that consumers have. We're going to have some consumers that will want to go back to normal and shop in stores as normal. And there are others that will be a bit more tentative, shall we say, and will want to have more of these contactless services as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've seen with that is obviously the direct-to-consumer brands. That all of a sudden, some of their distribution model has fallen on the side, and so they've not really had that engagement with the retailer. And also from our side, we've seen an increase in people wanting pop-up warehouse capability, so that they can actually localize their fulfillment capability within specific regions and make that delivery to the last mile a lot easier for them to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And it's also about managing costs as well. I mean, we have a phrase that we talk about within Fluent, where e-commerce was always about revenue. Order management and order fulfillment is all about the margin. So if we can fulfill a customer's promise and deliver that goods in a more efficient and cost-effective manner, that's really what these direct-to-consumer brands are calling out for.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we've all got to remember about that customer experience, the customer experience, largely people focus on the front end piece. They all focus on, what does it look like from the front end, and how does my marketing campaigns work, and how does that all fit together? But actually, that customer journey starts at the back end in all the plumbing. And, it's how you deliver that product, that final mile. What does that product look like? Do we fulfill the delivery promise that we've made? Let's all face it, when we're shopping on Amazon, we always, if you're a Prime customer, you click the Prime button, you look for the products that you can get tomorrow. That is what the customer is demanding in this market.
Yeah, I absolutely echo that, Paul. I think there's a couple of points that I'd also add to that. We're starting to really see the phrase convenience coming up more and more in conversations. And I think if you look at the Amazon model historically, it's always been about that convenience model. It's always been about those last minute purchases that you've needed to get either next day, which became the norm, and now it's actually same day is what the market is calling out for where possible. But what we see is really focusing on what I'd like to call responsible retailing is twofold. The first point is around the checkout process and just making sure that you're giving consumers options about when they receive goods. So I think supermarkets have always been good at this with reserving specific delivery time slots. You don't often see that with general merchandise or non-essential goods. You kind of get an offer of next day or 2 to 3 days or 5 to 7 days. I think there is a real requirement to kind of mirror what the supermarkets have been doing as a service, and perhaps there's an opportunity for retailers to charge a premium for that type of application. And I think as well, before the pandemic actually struck, we did see a consensus around greener delivery options or more eco-friendly delivery options. That was certainly something that I think at the checkout process, consumers are wanting to see. So those two choices. And I think from a retailer standpoint and a direct-to-consumer brand standpoint, the need to actually reduce expensive delivery options is paramount now more than ever. So if you think about what really encroaches margins, it's around split shipments. So if we added some intelligence into the browser experience that combined products that naturally fit together, but around products that can actually be sourced and fulfilled from a single location, we can reduce the need of split shipments. If we have products in multiple locations, then we can provide an incentive around a delivery slot that actually reduces the need to have expensive delivery options and actually reduce our costs there. I think the other that I just want to add as well, Paul, is we often talk about delivery and fulfillment. We kind of forget about returns, and returns is hugely important. You know, in the UK, I saw an article quite recently by Metapack, actually, who cited that in the UK alone, the cost of returns equates to £5.2 billion a year. And as we've been buying things online during the lockdown that we can't naturally return to a store, I think that cost is going to accelerate. So it's as important that retailers and brands think about cost efficient and cost effective returning policies.
Yeah, I totally agree, and those, they need to look at how they can effectively deliver those as well behind the scenes, and the store becomes an important component in that returns process. That can drive that cost down considerably, but also you've got the consumer in the store, you've just given them a refund, they may want to buy some other product. So it's a really important thing to join up that returns journey as well as the delivery journey. The other thing I think that customers have seen through this experience is loyalty. How do you deliver to those loyal customers? And I'm really surprised that some retailers haven't really embraced their loyal customer and actually said, you know what, you want that product, I'm going to get you that product regardless of where it is in my system. I don't mind if you've bought that £600 handbag, you are a loyal customer of mine, and I'm going to deliver it to you, whether I need to ship it from Sydney or New York. I want to keep you happy.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. We see that as a growing trend, and I think the biggest challenge that businesses have at the moment is, frankly speaking, they don't know where stock is in real time.
Yeah.
And there's a number of reasons for that. This is actually a statement that we picked up from RIS, citing that 72% of retailers agree omnichannel inventory management is a major factor in meeting their company's financial goals. But so many businesses struggle, and they struggle because of a number of reasons. I guess paramount to that is that legacy systems, and I'm thinking specifically things like ERP systems or back-end systems where historically you'd hold inventory, they were just never designed for some of the real-time demands that we're seeing in today's consumers and omni-channel journeys. So the need of real-time, consistent updates on inventory volumes and locations is absolutely paramount. And you simply can't do that with some of the existing processes, procedures, and technologies that have been in play. They just simply weren't designed to handle the sheer volume and scale that have been put on them at the moment. And if you can get that inventory management right, the two big issues that we see being addressed within retail right now is underselling. Right, so because you don't have a real-time view on inventory, and you're missing that opportunity to fulfill a customer's order at the point of when they want to make that purchase, you're missing revenue opportunities. And I think overselling as well, when you're selling products that you've sold out of, you don't have that real-time view of inventory. That's really, really paramount. And as I mentioned in one of our previous conversations, you know, the ability to segment inventory and recommend inventory through product recommendations based on what I know about that consumer, what channels are their preferred models, and really the available fulfillment options are really how we're seeing businesses adapting to that change. And putting all of that logic, all of that convenient information in the hands of the consumer before they've made the commitment to purchase, so before they've actually pressed the buy button, that's real convenience and that's real choice. And I think the retailers that are going to really thrive out of this pandemic are the ones that really focused on this area.
Absolutely, and I think the other key thing there that our customers should start to think about is that, you know, Amazon can offer quite a wide range of delivery flexibility, but with some simple tools implemented using very simple processes, it's easy for retailers to start to offer next day delivery. It's really easy for retailers to offer same day collection in store, even 30-minute collection in store. You just need the right technology coupled together so that you've got that real-time view of where all that stock is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to conclude that point, really, Paul, I think, you know, when we sort of mention phrases like click and collect to businesses, you kind of see people's faces glaze over because they're so familiar with that terminology. It's been around for a while. It's quite a mature concept, but the vast majority of businesses operate click and collect through a centralized delivery model. So it comes from a warehouse. So you'll often see in a lot of businesses click and collect services being available in 2 to 3 days. And that's because it's coming from a centralized hub. And what this pandemic has actually shown is that you have a lot of stock that isn't just in a warehouse. It's across the entire enterprise. It's in stores. I mean, there's a vast amount of stock that's been locked up in stores that retailers need to get hold of and push through the fulfillment channel as quickly and efficiently as possible. You've got other stock that's with third-party logistics companies. You might have stock that's in transit. You really need to have a centralized view on that inventory to make that real-time decision on how products can be fulfilled. That will enable you to have same-day type of services and also reduce the need of putting stock into red label sales because you're making it available to consumers across your entire enterprise. So if stock can be shipped from from stores, it enables them to reduce the cost of that fulfillment, but secondly, maximizing the revenue potential at the point of inspiration for the consumer. And I guess the other thing we've seen, Paul, is you know, as we've all been comfortable now with buying things online, and we haven't until very recently had the ability to go back into stores, is that we're now experiencing peak traffic volumes every single day. There hasn't really been another option for retailers to capture those consumers. And the technology that they've deployed has to be an enabler and never a constraining factor. And that's a phrase that I know I personally have used for, I think, the last 6 or 7 years, and it's still relevant today. The fact that we've now got cloud native technologies across the entire retail architecture that will enable scalability, flexibility, and adaptability means that the days of those long, drawn-out, expensive implementations for complex systems are now, thankfully, in the past. Projects really should evolve with speed and efficiency. And, you know, I think that an example of that can be with one of our customers recently who asked us to adapt from a ship from warehouse model to a ship from store model within 5 days. And that was achievable. Okay, so you can only do that if you've got technology underpinning your business that is flexible, that is easy to work with, and easy to adapt.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, we've worked with each other for a long time. And one of the things that we used to talk about was try to adapt your processes to the processes of the solution rather than trying to configure the solution to meet your business process. And efficiency and flexibility can only come when you use the out-of-the-box functionality. If you choose to configure it, then every time there's going to be an added expense for making that change. And I think that, you know, people need to look at this. They need to look at technology as being an enabler and actually adapt their business process to the business processes that already exist in the platform. Because the pressure when you have to come to scale is you really only want about 20% custom code in your solution. Any more than that, and all of a sudden you've got some expensive calls happening within the cloud infrastructure that's not going to give you that peak performance. So I think it's very important that we all learn to do that. Rather than trying to build a monster, let's build something that's very simple and adaptable. Yeah. And I think that everybody's learned, haven't they, that adaptability of your solution to flick a store to being a dark store quickly would enable a lot of retailers to sell a lot of stock over the last 4 to 6 weeks. because they didn't have that flexibility in their infrastructure, they haven't been able to do that. And that is something that we all need to work together to address over the coming 6 months, 12 months, to ensure our customers have that ability through simple configuration to make a simple change like that, to decide that they want to use their London store to fulfill rather than be a store, and solve the problem that they've just experienced.
Yeah, and I guess the other point I would raise here is that because of the pandemic, I think because everybody has been in the same position, one of the things that I take heart and comfort from is the fact that you have retailers, direct-to-consumer brands, suppliers, vendors, services companies all coming together and coming up with solutions that adapt to the current situations. And because of the growing trend in business for cloud type technologies or service type vendors, you've gone away from those transactional type models. The very nature of as a service type technologies means it's perpetual relationships. So you have to make sure that your vendors, your suppliers are held accountable for the tech that they're deploying. And you see a real partnership between the retailer and the supplier actually in ultimately servicing consumers.
And yeah, and so, you know, that day when we used to do large scale projects with really meaty discovery phases and then development and big test periods, that's disappearing. People want the ability to put something live quickly, and even if it's a fraction of the functionality that they want the ability within weeks to be able to put something live and make a huge impact on their business. And we all need to learn to adapt to that type of project delivery methodology.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess really to summarize it, Paul, then our recommendations. I mean, the first one for me is that we should embrace omnichannel. It became an unfashionable word, didn't it, over the last 12 months? But I think it's come back round again actually this year, because it really does deplete what's going on in our industry. Consumers' preferences have changed. They've changed more now than they ever have before. There are business models that we've had to get used to because of the COVID-19 crisis. Those processes are here to stay. So I think the first point that I would raise with any retailer looking to emerge from this and thrive is embrace that change, embrace that omni-channel journey, because it's here to stay.
Yeah, and absolutely. And also you've got to remember, we probably moved from 2 channels when omni-channel started to multiple channels now as well. So I think that this period also gives us the ability to assess where we are, what we've got, how do we become that retailer of the future? How do we enable our business to thrive in this new world where online transactions are going to start to get closer and closer to in-store revenue? And I think a lot of businesses need to take some time out now to do that assessment, and then to think about how they can transform, but not transform all in one bang. Let's pick individual processes and start to transform those processes one by one.
Yep, absolutely agree. You know, we've made this phrase constantly through this discussion actually, but having that single view of stock visibility across your entire enterprise is absolutely paramount. This is what we discuss at every single client engagement that we talk to and get involved in. Everything starts with stock and making sure that it's available to your consumers. You can commit to an availability to promise. It's amazing how many businesses don't have that. And we actually see different software packages, typically for each stock point in an organization. And that in today's world, that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think adaptability, we talked about a lot in this session, and I think it's one of the key takeaway messages for everybody is have a solution that you can adapt to change really quickly, but don't forget about scalability. That solution still needs to perform at high levels of load through peak trading periods or through periods that we're now currently experiencing. So stick to configuration, don't customize too much, and then you'll have a solution that can actually grow with the business.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Paul. And you know, we've seen examples with our clients experiencing 280 to 300% year-on-year growth going through the platform without any changes. So it gives them some comfort that they know that they can scale without too much complexity. And the final point here, I think, for businesses is to take back control, as you've mentioned. You know, don't feel daunted by having to make changes. Those changes can be made one process at a time, very quickly, very efficiently. So projects tend to take weeks now, as opposed to months and years that it used to historically. And really think about taking back control. Vendors aren't there just to be suppliers. Vendors are there to be partners. And you know, we are there to be held accountable for the solutions that we deploy and that we're asked to deploy. So this is really a joined up approach that we want to help our clients thrive as they emerge through this crisis.
Absolutely, and I think that hopefully everybody has taken away from this session some tips and some ideas about how they can go about doing that. And it's been great to chat about omni-channel retail and how customers are coping in the current climate.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob and Paul. I believe that was a very interesting presentation you gave us. Sadly, of course, due to the nature of our medium, you cannot hear the audience applauding you. But in their stead, let me do it for everybody. Thank you very much. Rob and Paul have informed me that they sadly do not have enough time to answer any questions at the moment, but they will follow up with anybody who has any interest via email. And yeah, thank you very much for being here. And I hope you took away a lot of interesting facts from this, and especially aside from the unfortunately worded last recommendation, which I as a European do not think sounded so good. But what we can take away is embrace change and find especially a change that works for you. Thank you very much. My name is Lucas, and I hope to see you again at some of our other webinars. Have a great day. I hereby end this webinar.